Just when you thought that I was all about the low-level gameplay, the shit-tier level casting, today I'm expanding my horizons. And here's the first installment to Procasting by yours truly. And for this here today, I was checking out some replays, and this one seemed to pop up. It's got a couple reviews that were suggesting that this might be an interesting game to look at. Pretty high quality. I'll be the judge of that. And our first player up here in red Aeon, of course this is ladder, so you're going to use blue and red. And this is going to be Robogear, doing his usual thing. With this, on the bottom here, his opponent is ZLO, the very classy Russian player that we all come to know and love throughout FAF. And he's playing Cybran in blue. And on this map, Serenity Desert, this is the 10x10 format here, which I believe the original was either, I'm thinking it's either the very small version, 5x5, or it was a 20 kilometer. I highly doubt it's a 20 kilometer, but for this one, it is the regular 10x10, whichever one it goes by. All right. Let's get this game going underway. With this map, it is very interesting build order, as you might notice from the way that these two players are starting out. ZLO is taking the time to utilize ground move order on that factory in order to pick up some of this reclaim, which there is an abundance of. Plenty of mass and energy to be taken, especially from these tree clumps, and then just solely dedicated mass chunks here and there. And they are spread in various clumps throughout the map, some on top of this unreachable ledge that you need a transport to get a hold of, or ground move from a factory. And just some in these much more open areas, or right next to the base, as you would have a couple labs coming out from ZLO to make an early raid. And with this amount of reclaim available at the start, typically these players tend to slow down their expanding efforts. Well, how do I really say that? Their ACU concentrates mostly at the start by building some power, especially with how much reclaim and energy that you get at the start. You don't necessarily need to get started right away on building these structures. And you can use that build power on your ACU and the engineers around you to start getting more energy, more factories queued up as you go along, especially because how widespread everything is as far as the core base. All of the mass extractors you pretty much have to walk towards in order to effectively utilize and build. And ZLO had gone for a much less power-intensive build to get his air factory, whereas Robogear is utilizing much more P-gens. He did get the second factory as well, but ZLO was the first to take the cake on that. However, it would seem that Robogear has already gotten his expansion around his base, his core base. This is his natural base, I would gather and interpret. It's just so easy to access from any production that you have in your base. He is much sooner to get the hydros and the mass extractors, whereas ZLO is very slow, one or the other. He's very slow to get to his, although I think with the total reclaim, ZLO has absorbed more mass, I believe energy as well, yep. Although with much more production going in right now. Well, there's that first lab that didn't unfortunately make it, although this second one might be able to do something here. Although he's not... Ooh. Pot shot from that Aurora managed to take it down enough for that engineer to reclaim it. So neither lab was able to successfully raid anything, which is going to offset for ZLO, unfortunately. He is focusing much more on the air production, assuming that he wants to utilize the fact that Cybran typically wants to use their early air game with jesters and bombers against an opponent like Aeon. And there's Robogear's ACU already on the move. He's got his first T2 mechs. ZLO is not started anything for T2, unfortunately. It would seem that from the figures here, Robogear has a bit more of a natural economic slide in scaling here. Although we got some Mantis going around here raiding. Fucking little buggers. Making the best out of that speed that the Mantis are dreadfully known for. Although this is a map that would tend to emphasize the importance of raiding, especially for Cybran. All this open field here is quite a bit for Auroras to have to cover with their very slow speed. Although distinct range, they would have to cover this very well, otherwise they're going to constantly have these groups of tanks roaming around in the back, attacking their units. Seems that got the second air factory going for Robo. Air is going to be very important for Cybran in this case, especially if he wants to abuse the natural weakness that Aeon Auroras tend to have against air. There's that tank going up in there. And ZLO's got quite a bit of air going on. He could definitely use that bomber to the full extent if he's careful in attempting to suppress the interceptor spam coming from Robogear. Although he is building his own mobile AA to defend himself. Beyond that, it doesn't seem like the Mantis are really... Well, they each have a kill. Likely killing the... one Aurora, I would figure, and one Aurora and an engineer. That'll be dispatched rather quickly. That group of Mantis seemed to swerve over into this side. Robogear has a bit more control going on in his section. There's still some mass extractors that need to be claimed by ZLO. Still got 4 air factories. In fact, he's building a transport now. And he's got a few factories going on here. Little bits of raiding going on, although now the production coming from Robogear is starting to head out there, make use of themselves and trying to cover and pressure ZLO as much as he can. Take advantage of the fact that for the most part Auroras can bully any other T1 tank as long as they're microed effectively. It's not a good thing to have. I feel like these interceptors have been taking friendly fire from those bombers. Still some occasional Mantis spilling here and there as Robogear tries to get his tanks. Oddly enough, in fact, I was noticing he has a significant production advantage over ZLO, who doesn't have nearly as many T1 land factories to crank out those Mantis. He's starting to take control over the bottom section here and contain the Mantis problem. And oddly enough, Robogear has his tanks very forward compared to ZLO. Naturally, I would assume with all these speed of these tanks, they would be up here and pressuring him with those Auroras. But not too much going on. ZLO has gotten one engineer up there to actually get some of that reclaim going on. Although there's a hefty group of engineers here. Neither of them have been really all that invested in taking control of the center mountain mass quite yet. Man, this is a different ballpark from what I'm used to. Shitcasting is really a different ballpark here. Not nearly as enough action and excitement coming around as I'll find with the lower tier games. Those Auroras are going to be pushing down. And there's that transport full of engineers. Might want to drop some here to pick up some of this reclaim and get some engineers up here and around here. He definitely wants to get his ACU somewhere. There it is. He wants to get that ACU up here, although there isn't very much room to move around. You could easily get caught out up there. It's probably a bit easier to defend as well. And upgrades now going down on Robo's ACU. Intends to utilize a gun commander. There's a drop here that neither of them have really been able to take control of this quite, although he does have an engineer reclaiming. This engineer here is probably going to get killed off by these Auroras. And Robo should have an easier time taking control of that. Yes. And there's some more Mantis up here. He's already dropped engineers up here. Auroras are starting to push down, although there's no response really. No concentrated mass to respond to all these Auroras swarming at the bottom. Only just little packs of Mantis peeking through here and there. Now the air game's also starting to look a bit more situated for both players. With 28, 29 interceptors. And 25 for Robo, 28-9 around for ZLO. This Aurora group taking out a couple mixes here. Actually might be able to do a bit of damage if he doesn't get some of tanks over there. Although sending him in streamed isn't going to help him either. And there's a few of Robo's interceptors. Got caught out a little bit out of position, although it seems that a couple of his own, ZLO's, will also be running amok to their doom. And indeed, that engineer at the top was taken out, but some Mantis will be able to deal with that shortly. Robo is not taken to building... I was going to say T2 air would be a vital thing for Robo to help secure air and use against his opponent. ZLO is utilizing bombers to take out this group here. With the center mass now in control for ZLO. And as far as if I recall, Obsidians starting to be produced by Robogear. An interesting choice against Cybran. He's not going to have a bit of resistance against that, since ZLO would naturally probably try to scale his production up to T2 and skip to T3. And ooh, a little bit of AFK play here. Wants to reclaim those Mantis, but PD is telling him not to. Needless to say, those tanks are going to go down, but so did the engineers with it. There's a ton of tanks up here, and it, again, with all this space open, allows some Mantis to sneak by and get some filthy, sneaky raids off on some of these mexes and radars. He's got a T2 over here, which can get picked off super easily. Those T2 with the Obsidians. Transport now being dropped there with Mantis aboard and help take out some of that. They're going to move up to try to respawn. Although if he does move in up there, he's going to let this swarm of Mantis roll up. And doesn't want that. A lot more T1 factories coming out of the center. ZLO using his ACU to build some and reinforce his position up here on the mountain as he gets all that extra economy. This is one of those maps that arguably they're going to have a ton of economy to be able to skip the T2 stage. Unfortunately, Obsidians will not have the momentum to get around and cover against all these Mantis. And I don't figure, although those Obsidians are excellent, against single units. They're not very good against mass numbers of T1 tanks. And a shielded gun comm now for Robogear. Probably wants to use that to take out some of the... Well, he could use it to pressure this mountain face, although he would get easily cut off from over here unless... See, with as few tanks as there are coming down from here, Robo would have a hard time, especially with how many Mantis and artillery rather are seaming through. Still no tech actually from ZLO, pausing his air factories. He's got that going. He's got T2 going on his ACU as well, relying on Obsidians against Cyber and Tech. He's got Mantis, and especially with the stun on that Medusa, will definitely hinder those T2 tanks. I'm not really sure this is the brightest approach against this. Although ZLO's lack of teching here is rather questionable. He is getting a TML. That is a bit far back, though, isn't it, my old friend? Yeah, it's not really going to get much done. There's TMD over by the HQ and PGen, and he's going to be able to cover that fairly well. Not a whole lot of targets besides just overlapping T2 radars there. That seems like a mistake. Maybe the noobs of our ladder vault here of the shitcasting have been learning a thing or two from the pros. The onslaught. Now, Obsidians, as shit as they are, with limited range, and although that overkill cannon, they will definitely tank quite a few hits in smaller groups of tanks. So as long as they're not facing overwhelming numbers, Obsidians will do an excellent job against fewer numbers of enemy units. And is that what I think it is? It is Gunther's. ZLO utilizing T2 Arty on the very center mass. Interesting choice. Very interesting. Yeah, and there's no more Auroras really to press and defend. He's relying solely on Obsidians here. I feel like this might be a bit of a meme game going on with what they're trying to press here. There's Swiftwinds. Taking a lot of anti-air fire, however, from ZLO's T1 air static defense. And this is going to be the air engagement now as he wants to set his sights on taking control. And there's not really enough, although enough maybe to change the tide, or turn the tide rather. There's just not enough interceptors to tank for the Swiftwinds, or vice versa. And ZLO comfortably takes control of that air game. Some scouts rolling on through. Yes, and this clump of T2 tanks were dealt with appropriately, although another group is amassing towards the bottom here. His ACU is actually not really doing anything at the moment. He has not really been able to use that upgrade, any of those upgrades. At best, all he's benefited from was the 8 extra defense for the shield. Some Mantis coming up here to raid. Can those two Obsidians do enough to cover for the eco? Stop them from doing too much damage. As tanky as they are, they just simply won't do. A lot of damage, but not enough killing potential against high numbers, unfortunately. As Mantis are starting to push through along, the fewer counts of Obsidians and Auroras, there's nothing really to cover how much speed that ZLO has against him. Although I did just see, yes, Harbs have already been launched from the T3 HQ. Robo seems to be the only one who's playing rather naturally. ZLO is, of course, the infamous gray fox that we've all come to know and love. He is quite the tacticianer, using unorthodox approaches to winning the game. I mean, at least competing. These Obsidians, though, have actually been doing a fair number. He's got enough flak that's covering from those bombers, but unfortunately, not enough. There's just very few tanks to actually fight off against these Obsidians as they're actually rolling through. They killed the T2 mass extractor in between those factories. Harbs, though, are going to be a big problem. And almost a T3 mass extractor. Good lord, ZLO. What have you been doing, man? Obsidians, though. They've already killed some eco here. And they're just going in. Uncontested. What a strange sight to behold. That's got a Harb attached on that little boat there. There was some structures here, and I think this was TML'd. Yes, it's got a few kills actually on there, so he must have sniped a bunch of the other structures, just as I had sort of imagined. These factories and whatnot. He's going for another target, perhaps. Ah, the ACU. Well, that's not going to cut it. These Obsidians have been dealt with. And the Harb was dropped back here to take out the T2 radar and the T2 mass extractor that was there. These are a lot of units, though. The Medusa fire is really what's going to... Ooh, eating that straight-up Gunther fire. Man. Deadly. And here comes an impending air battle again. He swerves with those swift winds, of which he's got a fair abundance of now. This might be the chance to gain the air control that he needs. And although there was all that pressure and ground loss for Robo, he's lost quite a bit now, but he's just... There's no tech whatsoever from ZLO. I think he's taken a vow of abstinence from using any Cybern-related tech. Besides the one that's on his ACU, of course. Yeah, that's pretty much all he has available. He's got 2 T3 mass extractors. My god. The Mad Lad. This is the man we've all come to expect and know about. He suits his persona well. His reputation precedes him. Those Harbs, though, backed by Obsidians, they are getting bombed to death, though. There isn't any anti-air covering for these tanks and Harbs. And with little production that he has, he's got quite a bit down here at the bottom as well to respond to that. But that's not nearly going to be enough to slow down the eventual tide of Harbs that are going to be pouring from his production. Likely everything is, yes, upgraded to T3. How is ZLO going to win this with no tech? Is that what his plan was, to try to win? Not using any tech? Yes, and all those swift winds with about, I believe, about 3 times as much HP as a regular swift wind, or about 2 times. They're going to mop up everything. And good God, those Harbs still kicking it. One of them at 200 HP. What? Says ZLO in the chat. Something must have clicked with him then. What that might have been, we're not sure. But Robo's swift winds come in to lay off on these bombers. Yes, didn't watch air. He unfortunately did not see that engagement. And Harbs were dropped, and he's lost 2 T3 mass extractors. Oh, but he's got one here, but that just... Oh, man. That drop that came in from this transport did a huge toll on him, and more following up on the bottom. This has, unsurprisingly, with no tech, gone in Robo's favor. ZLO is the one that's playing rather strangely here. Laser. What a surprise. The jack of all trades faction, Cybran. Well, not really jack of all trades, just the one with the most options available. Even when you've lost everything, you have no tech, just go laser. How he's going to do that, though, is unlikely going to succeed. He's still trying to press with the Mantis and tanks that he has, but this is just way too late. Harbs are on the field. There's nothing to be done about it. His base is decimated now. All his air factories is eco. The only thing he has is what's here, that T3 mass extractor, and on this base, he does have 2 T2P gens and a bunch of production, the T1 factories. It's a PD to defend, but unfortunately T3 can just rather easily mop up T1 PD if they utilize their range. What a stifling change of pace. Robogear was looking a little bit shaky with as little units as he had, switching full on to those obsidians. But somehow it was just enough to pressure ZLO. And then again, ZLO wasn't even... we can chalk this up to just not trying hard at all. No tryharding. I suppose, though, yes, even with all that, Robo playing naturally here in this game was, up until this point, he was kind of on even terms with ZLO. What on earth was ZLO even spending all this T3 economy on? I guess structures, like take 2 structures, like Gunther's and whatnot, but I guess the only thing would just be more factories, more land spam, more Mantis. We can go to our correspondent, God King Xerxes, to give us enough to describe to us what Mantis are all about. And there goes all the T1 PD. Just as expected. Nothing can really be done against T3 land except T3 land. He is at almost 90% here on the laser. He does have enough economy. He's no doubt power stalling, but he has the mass and bank to get this upgrade going. Slow and surely. And as expected, gunships. Frankly, even with this sort of upgrade, I do figure that Robogear is fully aware of what ZLO is attempting to do. In fact, he's going to be scouting over to see that he is indeed upgrading. I wonder if he is going to notice. He will notice by the time this ACU is actually on the move. Stealth's not going to do him very much unless he's completely invisible with cloak. Robogear is just not going to allow him to have this opportunity to snipe him. As those gunships are just going around cleaning up every little bit of resistance left of the Cybran ghettos? The Cybran guerrillas. Guerrillas, ghettos, same thing really. It's just a fucking jungle anyway. Those Gunthers actually kind of doing a bit of damage there. Not enough to really stifle their assault on them. And ZLO is on the move. He's actually preemptively built some... Ooh. He's built some T1 air. And there goes his ACU. He's preordained. He has foresight of what ZLO is attempting to do here. And oh my goodness. Though ZLO is definitely on the back pedal here, with nothing to back him up, no air. This isn't going to do anything to help with his problem. We do get to witness the unraveling of Aeon before the Cybran laser technology. And isn't the Mazercom just a beautiful sight to behold? Nothing really gets your fucking dick hard rock like 4K DPS laser. I guess if you're a femoid, might get you wet, but well, ZLO is very well aware that nothing can be done about this now. Robogear's ACU is very well and truly out of harm's reach. Actually, could have very easily have been killed by the explosion there. Robogear so easily could have died at that very moment. Oh my god. I don't think he was paying attention. I don't think he was aware at all of the danger. That transport, oh my goodness. Had all of that led up to that moment where Robogear was very far away from danger, somehow getting on that transport, getting too close to that ACU and that detonation, oh, that would have been a satisfying conclusion, but this was satisfying nonetheless. Wow, that was an interesting game. Certainly not one of those typical games that you normally see, but this was really fun to watch nonetheless. Fact is, I think it's a lot harder to find pro games worth casting than the shit casting, because anyone is suitable for shit casting, I believe, especially with the kinds of gameplays and ideas and choices that are made. But with pro games, it typically ends up being either just a stomp of eventual avalanche that really doesn't add up to a whole lot. It ends up like that. Very seldom do you get some interesting action-packed gameplay with some very interesting choices and plays here and there spread out to make the game a bit more spicy for everyone to watch. Well, that was certainly well worth it, and this won't be the last of the procasting. Shitcasting's not going to end either. I am just, I might as well just flex on these other casters to show you how it's done with casting. I wonder if Jagged was going to get to this one. He might be able to cast it much better than I will, though. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this little installment here, the first of its kind. And we shall see you in the next one, alright? Alright. Take care.